Internet scams are all over. They prey on your innocence and/or desperation to get you to hand over things that you otherwise wouldn't. And there are very few places more desperate right now than the job hunting sector. I have a friend who unfortunately fell victim to an employment scam recently, and I wanted to go through it with you all step by step by step, so that we could all be more wise of this scam and maybe avoid falling into it ourselves. The scam began with my friend getting an email from someone who claimed to be a representative of a clothing line called Dark Sport. They said that they saw my friend's resume on Indeed.com and that they were very impressed. They wanted to offer a position as a remote graphics designer that would be paid $25 to $50 an hour. Let's dissect this. To start out, this was a completely unprompted, out-of-the-blue email with a random job offering. Now, a lot of the time, people looking for a job reach out to the employer, not the other way around. I mean, it's not unheard of. Sometimes an employer goes on the hunt for new workers through sites like Indeed and LinkedIn and choose people based on if their resumes line up with what they're looking for. But if you're wet behind the ears and don't have a background that could rock somebody's socks off, it's a smart move to proceed with caution when getting random job offers, especially if there's this kind of opportunity on the table. I checked out Dark Sport. They are a legit clothing and marketing company that have been around for quite a long time. This email supposedly came from a person named Mimi Skinner. Now, there is a Mimi Skinner that works with Civil Clothing, the parent company for Dark Sport. They are currently employed there, and their skill sets do include recruiting, so that checks out. But what the heck is this? Srutiger? Yeah, Merriam-Webster doesn't say that that's a word, and neither do any of the search engines I checked either. That, plus the random spaces where they shouldn't be, told me that there were definitely shenanigans afoot. Spelling mistakes are a common sign of an email scam. Out of curiosity, while my friend was venting about being scammed, I asked them to give me the email address so that I could look further into it. The email address was info@darksportjobs.store. I decided to look up the domain info of this URL and see if I could find more about who this person might be. So it looks like this domain was registered on February 1st, 2024. Seems a bit new for a company that's been around for quite a long time. It was also apparently registered using a service called Namecheap. Yeah, that sounds like a reputable company to get a domain from. Sarcasm aside, Namecheap is an important factor in all this. Why? Because Dark Sport's official website, darksport.com, was registered using GoDaddy, and it was registered in 2014, a whole 10 years before the Namecheap domain. So ask yourself, wouldn't it make more sense for this company to just lump their email services into GoDaddy as well? Why pointlessly fragment your domain provider like that? Like what, does your company just really like paying service charges? This to me is a major sign that the person behind this email address is not who they claim to be. Going further down the rabbit hole that I didn't need to go down, after some slightly deeper digging, I actually found a Reddit post from someone who got a very similar email with a very similar job description, supposedly also coming from Mimi Skinner. Only this time, it was a job for the parent company of Dark Sport, Civil Clothing. Oh, also, I noticed that this email mentions that they're accepting per-time employment, which is not a thing. Like, what? The OP on this post mentioned that their email came from info@civilclothingjobs.store. So I looked into that domain. Surprise, surprise, this one also comes from Namecheap, and the actually real official site, civilclothing.com, is registered through, you guessed it, GoDaddy, and they've been registered since 2006. So clearly, it's the same scam. I'd say it's right down to the letter, but technically, they did try to fix the grammar issues in a few spots, and made a few extras in the process. Seriously, Srutiger? Unfortunately, my friend didn't recognize the red flags and chose to respond to their email. This person invited my friend to have an interview via Skype, which does make some sense. After all, it's good to have a face-to-face interaction with whoever you're about to hire, and maybe Skype is their company's chosen communication platform. However, this was not going to be a voice call or a video call. This interview was going to be conducted through text. To me, that sounds like the interviewer didn't want my friend to see or hear them. Almost like it would have been obvious that they weren't Mimi Skinner. On top of this, job sites like Indeed and LinkedIn have DMs. If the interview is gonna be done in text anyways, why not do it all on site? That way, there would be a record of it on an employment-based platform, and there'd be more safety and more accountability and less tomfoolery. Anyways, my friend went through with the interview and waited to hear an update. The next day, they were told that they were hired. All they needed to do was fill out some forms and hand over some information, and they were on the team. One form was a general employment contract. The other was a W-4 form. The employment contract apparently looked extremely legit, including the signature of the CEO. It required a photo ID. So my friend handed over their driver's license. A W-4 is a standard IRS document that's needed for tax reasons. It asks for a lot of personal details. Things like your name, address, city details, and your social security number. My friend filled it out and sent it to them. You probably know how dangerous it is to hand this kind of information over to the wrong people. Handing over your ID gives scammers full info about what you look like, where you live, your birthday, your height, your weight, your gender, basically everything about you. And with the W-4, you give away your social security number. That's needed for all kinds of financial things. A stolen social security number could lead to credit cards being made in your name that destroy your credit score, getting your tax return stolen, having your social benefits diverted to an account that's not yours. All in all, it can completely ruin your life. Sadly, these scammers were not done. Next, they wanted my friend to print out a check that they emailed, deposit the check via mobile banking,
so no bank tellers can intervene, cough cough,
send them a record of the deposit taking place, and then buy a set of supplies needed for the job. And they were going to be referring my friend to a special vendor. Thankfully, someone close to my friend stopped them and asked to see the check. They looked up the routing number, and even though the check said Bank of America on it, the routing number came from a random credit union in Oklahoma, which is extra confusing considering this is supposed to be a company based in California. My friend contacted Mimi via Skype and asked them about this inconsistency. And this is the jumbled up jargon that they spit back out. Clearly, they're working off of a pre-written script, and they weren't ready for a question outside of what they were told to say. Well, Mimi, I don't need to hear an explanation out of you, because here's what was gonna happen. My friend was gonna deposit that check. The check was gonna appear deposited in their account for the next couple of days. Then, my friend was gonna go to the carefully curated link, which is run by the scammers. My friend would then buy the supplies, which cost upwards of thousands of dollars. Then, shortly after buying everything needed, the check was gonna bounce, meaning the scammers would get paid thousands by my friend without giving a cent back, and my friend would be out of thousands of dollars, potentially putting them in the red if they don't have that kind of money in their account. Which, let's be real, I wouldn't blame them in the least for that, because they're looking for a job. To make money! This whole racket is disgusting. It's taking advantage of the fear and desperation folks have to be employed at a good place. And again, for my friend, their troubles are not over. Their information is out there now, and there's very little that can be done about it. The worst part? I don't blame my friend even a single bit. There were some solid confidence tricks on display here. And in vulnerable circumstances, it's easy to overlook the signs. Anyone could fall for this given bad enough conditions. There's only one thing I could think of that could prevent this from happening to anyone else. Well, two things actually. Firstly, educate yourself on these kinds of scams. The more knowledge you have on the tactics, the safer you'll be if you run into them in the future. Second, remember the golden rule of internet safety. If it sounds too good to be true, then it likely isn't true.